No treatment worked, until the millionaire drank something no one can explain. William Harrison woke up every morning feeling like 1,000 needles were piercing his chest. The doctors couldn't explain what was happening to the 52-year-old businessman who had built an empire in the construction industry in New York City. That's when Mrs. Beatrice, his housekeeper of more than 20 years, appeared at his office door holding a green bottle with a strange liquid. The man who oversaw dozens of construction sites across the city could barely breathe properly, but no tests showed any problem with his heart or lungs. "Mr. William, you need to drink this," said the grey-haired woman, holding out the bottle. "Beatrice, I've taken every medicine there is. The best cardiologists in the country have examined me." "This isn't ordinary medicine, boss. It's something your mother, Mrs. Margaret, taught me to make a long time ago." William stopped shuffling through his papers. His mother had passed away 15 years ago, and since then he rarely allowed anyone to speak about her. The chest pains had started shortly after she left, but he had always believed it was a coincidence. "My mother never taught you anything about medicine," he replied sharply. "Yes, she did, sir. Many things you don't know about." Beatrice's voice had a firmness William rarely heard. The woman had worked for the family since before he was married. She knew every corner of that house and every secret it held. That afternoon, during an important meeting with investors, the pain returned stronger than ever. William doubled over the table, trying to breathe, while the men in suits around him stood up, worried. "Call an ambulance," shouted his partner, Richard. No need," William managed to say between the stabs. "It'll pass." But this time, it didn't pass. The pain continued for hours, preventing him from concentrating on anything. When he got home, Beatrice was waiting in the kitchen with the same green bottle. "Now you're going to listen to me," she said, leaving no room for argument. William looked at the greenish liquid. The smell was strange, half bitter, half sweet. It vaguely reminded him of something, but he couldn't identify what. "What is that?" "Drink first, then I'll explain." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. That helps us a lot as beginners. Now continuing. With the pain still throbbing, William took a small sip. The taste was bitter, but there was something familiar about it. Almost immediately, he felt a subtle relief, as if a small part of the tension in his chest began to dissolve. "Feels a little better, doesn't it?" asked Beatrice, watching his expression. "How do you know?" "Because I've been watching you suffer for years, and I know what causes this pain." William took another sip. This time, a strange sensation washed over him. It was as if something very deep inside him began to stir, trying to come to the surface. "Beatrice, where did you get this recipe?" "From your mother, like I said. Mrs. Margaret always made this when you were little and got very agitated or sad. I don't remember that. There's a lot you don't remember, boss." The housekeeper put the bottle in a locked cabinet and left the kitchen, leaving William alone with his thoughts. For the first time in months, he managed to sleep without waking up in the middle of the night with pain. The next day, his daughter Sarah showed up at the office with a folder of documents. The 28-year-old, who had a degree in business administration, had been pressuring her father to expand the business. "Dad, I need you to sign these papers today," she said, placing the folder on the desk. "What papers are these?" "The sale of Grandma's house in Philadelphia. The buyer is offering an excellent amount, and you know that property only generates expenses." Upon hearing about his mother's house, William felt the pains return instantly. It was as if just mentioning that place awakened something painful inside him. "I'm not going to sell." "Dad, be rational. The house has been abandoned for 15 years. No one is going to live there anymore." "I said, I'm not going to sell." The intensity of his own reaction surprised him. Why did he care so much about a house he never visited? Sarah looked at him with concern. "Dad, are you okay?" "You turned pale." William drank a glass of water, trying to control his breathing. The pains were becoming unbearable again. "I need to go home." When he arrived, he looked for Beatrice immediately. The housekeeper was in the laundry room, folding clothes with her usual calm. Beatrice, I need that drink again. What happened? Sarah wants to sell my mother's house. Beatrice's eyes filled with deep sadness. She stopped folding clothes and looked directly at him. And you don't want to sell? I don't know why, but I can't even think about it. Just imagining. The pains come back full force. Come with me. Beatrice took him to the kitchen and prepared a new dose of the green liquid. This time William paid attention to every movement she made. He saw when she opened a jar with dried leaves, when she mixed something that looked like honey, when she added a few drops of a clear liquid. Beatrice, my daughter is right. That house only generates expenses. Why can't I get rid of it? Because there are things in that house that you need to resolve before saying goodbye to it. What kind of things? The housekeeper finished preparing the drink and handed it to him. Drink slowly and try to remember the last time you were there. William took a sip and closed his eyes. Confused images began to appear in his mind. He saw himself as a boy, running through the hallways of that house. There was another child with him, a slightly older boy. There's someone with me in my memories, he said, opening his eyes. Who? I don't know. A boy, but I can't see his face clearly. Beatrice nodded as if she expected that answer. Keep drinking. The memories will become clearer little by little. In the following days, William established a routine. Every morning before going to the office, he drank the green liquid prepared by Beatrice. The chest pains decreased, but something more disturbing began to happen. He started having very vivid dreams about the house in Philadelphia. He dreamed he was there, a child again, playing in the backyard with someone he couldn't see clearly. There were always laughs, but there was also something sad in those dreams, a feeling of loss that he couldn't explain. During a meeting with architects, William got distracted thinking about those dreams. He was planning a new project when Richard, his partner, called his attention. William, are you listening to me? Sorry, I was thinking about something else. You've been acting strange lately. Is everything okay? I'm great, just dealing with some family matters. Richard had known him for over 20 years and knew when something was bothering him. Is it about your mother's house? Sarah told me you refused to sell. I don't want to talk about that. William, you know you can trust me. If there's something bothering you, I said I don't want to talk. William's voice echoed through the room, making everyone present fall silent. He realized he had overreacted and tried to control himself. Sorry, let's continue with the meeting. But his mind was far from those projects and contracts. All he could think about was the taste of that green liquid and the memories it seemed to awaken. That night, William found Beatrice organizing some old papers in the pantry. What are these papers? Old family things. Your mother asked me to keep it. May I see? Beatrice hesitated for a moment, then handed one of the sheets to him. It was a birth certificate. William read the name, James Harrison. Who is James Harrison? You don't remember James? Should I? He's your older brother. Beatrice's words seemed to echo in his mind like thunder. William felt his legs go weak and had to lean against the wall. I don't have a brother. I never did. Yes, you do, sir. James is 54, 2 years older than you. That's impossible. I would know if I had a brother. Beatrice looked at him with a mix of sadness and understanding. You forgot because remembering was too painful. But James exists, and he's alive. William felt the chest pains return with an intensity he had never experienced before. It was as if his body was rejecting that information. Where is he? At an assisted living facility in Philadelphia. I need that drink. Now. Beatrice poured a double shot of the green liquid. While William drank, she continued speaking. James had an accident when you were children. He ended up with some limitations, but he's still the same sweet boy who used to play with you in the backyard. Why did nobody ever tell me this? Because you asked to forget. You were only 10 when it happened. The pain was too much for a child to carry. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. William finished his drink and sat down heavily on the kitchen chair. Fragments of memories began to appear more clearly. He saw a boy with brown hair, 2 years older, always protecting his younger brother. Did we play together? Every day. You were inseparable. James taught you how to play soccer, how to ride a bike, how to climb trees. And the accident? Beatrice took a deep breath before continuing. You were playing in the backyard of the house. There was a very tall apple tree, and James wanted to show that he could reach the highest branches. You stayed below, cheering him on. William closed his eyes, and for the first time in decades he could see his brother's face clearly. A mischievous smile, eyes full of life, always inventing new adventures. He fell. He fell. And you blamed yourself for not stopping him. You were in shock for weeks. Your mother tried everything to help you cope, but you just kept repeating that it was your fault. And then, one day, you simply stopped talking about James. You stopped asking about him, stopped mentioning his name. It was as if you had erased him from your memory. William opened his eyes, and tears streamed down his face without him noticing. And my mother agreed to that. Mrs. Margaret suffered a lot with that decision. But the doctors said it might be your mind's way of protecting itself. You were too young to handle so much guilt. And James? How is he? He had some after effects from the accident. He needs special care, but he's a happy person. He always asks about you. Does he remember me? He remembers everything. James has an excellent memory for the past. He always talks about his little brother who played soccer with him. William abruptly stood up from the chair. I need to see him. Are you sure? I need to, right now. Mr. William, it's late. The facility doesn't allow visits after 8 at night. Then tomorrow, first thing tomorrow morning. Beatrice nodded, but there was worry in her eyes. Are you sure you're ready? Seeing James might bring back a lot of emotions. I don't care. I need to get to know my brother again. That night, William barely managed to sleep. When he finally fell asleep, he dreamed of 2 children running through the backyard, laughing and playing as if they were the only people in the world. He woke up with a strange feeling in his chest, but for the first time in years, it wasn't pain. It was something he had forgotten how it felt, longing. The next morning, William cancelled all his meetings and asked Beatrice to accompany him to Philadelphia. During the hour-and-a-half trip, he took small sips of the green drink the maid had prepared in a thermos. Beatrice, how did you know about James all these years? Your mother asked me never to tell, but she also asked me never to forget. She visited James every week until the last day of her life. She went in secret. She didn't want to force you to remember until you were ready. Mrs. Margaret always believed that one day you would want to find your brother again. Is that why she taught you to make that drink? She said it was the memory remedy. When you grew up and the pains of guilt started to show in your body, that drink would help bring back what was hidden in your heart. William looked out the car window, seeing the familiar landscape of the road to Philadelphia. It was a route he had taken hundreds of times as a child, always going to visit his grandmother's house. Grandma's house was where James and I used to play. It was. You spent all your vacations there. Your grandmother loved having the 2 grandsons running around the property. That's why I can't sell the house. That's why. It holds the happiest memories of your childhood. When they arrived at the assisted living facility in Philadelphia, William felt his heart race. It was a beautiful place with well-kept gardens and a peaceful atmosphere. Beatrice spoke to the receptionist, explaining the situation. Mr. James is in the back garden, said the nurse, a middle-aged woman with a gentle smile. He likes to stay there in the morning watching the birds. William and Beatrice walked down the hallways until they reached a glass door that opened to an inner garden. And then William saw him. James was sitting on a bench, feeding some birds with breadcrumbs. He had grey hair, a few extra pounds, but his smile was exactly the same as William remembered from his dreams. That's James, whispered Beatrice. William stood still, watching his brother for a few minutes. James seemed at peace, talking softly to the birds as if they were old friends. What if he doesn't want to see me? He always wanted to see you. Every day James asks if today will be the day his little brother comes to visit him. William took a deep breath and walked toward the bench. James looked up and for a moment stood still, as if he didn't believe what he was seeing. "Billy?" he asked, his voice full of emotion. "Hi, James." James stood up slowly and looked at William as if he were seeing a ghost. "You've grown so much," he said, and then smiled that mischievous grin that William remembered. "But you still have the same face as when you were little." The two brothers looked at each other for a long moment, and then James opened his arms. "I knew you would come back. I always knew." William stepped forward and hugged his brother. It was a hug that had been interrupted more than 40 years ago and was finally being completed. "James, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I forgot about you." "You don't need to apologize. I understand you were very young." They sat down on the bench and James went back to feeding the birds. "Do you remember when we tried to teach the birds at Grandma's house to talk?" William smiled. That memory was coming back now, clear as crystal. "I remember. You said that if we were patient, they would learn to say our names. And you always got impatient and wanted to give up. But you never gave up on anything." James looked at his brother with affection. "Never on you." "I never gave up on you." William felt his eyes fill with tears again. "James, I need to tell you something. I've been having chest pains for years, pains that no doctor can explain." "Pains of longing?" The simplicity of the question touched William deeply. "I think so. I have them too. But now that you're here, they're already getting better." They talked for hours. James told him about his life at the assisted living facility, about the friends he had made, about the books he liked to read. William talked about business, about Sarah, about how he had built an entire life without realizing a fundamental part was missing. "James, would you like to meet your niece?" "Sarah? Of course. Mom always talked about her. She said she inherited the family's intelligence." "Did our mother come to visit you?" "Every week. She brought photos of you, told me how you were doing in business. I've always been proud of my little brother." William realized that his mother had carried the burden of keeping the family together, even when it was separated. She had protected both her sons in the only way she knew how. "James, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you forgive me for forgetting about you?" James stopped feeding the birds and looked directly at William. "Billy, there's nothing to forgive. You were a child who was suffering. Besides, you didn't really forget. If you had forgotten, you wouldn't be here today." "What do you mean?" "Your heart always remembered. That's why the pains. It was trying to tell you that you were missing someone." William smiled through his tears. His older brother was still the same wise boy who used to comfort him when they were little. "James, I want you to see where I live now. I want you to meet Sarah. I want to make up for lost time." "I'd love that. But are you sure? I don't want you to feel obligated just because you found me again." "Absolutely sure. You're my brother. You always were, even when I couldn't remember." When they returned to New York City, William took James straight home. Mrs. Beatrice had prepared the guest room and made a special meal. Sarah was waiting in the living room, nervous about the meeting. "Dad, are you sure this is a good idea?" she had asked on the phone. "You just found this man again. Wouldn't it be better to take it slow?" But when she saw James enter the house, smiling and greeting everyone with natural kindness, Sarah immediately understood why her father had missed him for so many years. "You must be Sarah," James said, extending his hand. "I'm James, your father's brother. Very happy to meet you." "Me too, Uncle James." "Uncle James," he repeated, smiling. "I like the sound of that." During dinner, James told stories from their childhood that William was slowly remembering. Sarah discovered that her father had been a mischievous kid, always following his older brother's adventures. "Once you two tried to build a tree house," James recounted. "Your father insisted he knew how to use a hammer and ended up nailing his own shirt to the wood." "Is that true, Dad?" William laughed, the memory coming back fully. "It's true." And James laughed so hard he fell out of the tree. But it was just a small tree, so he didn't get hurt. "Back then," James added. There was a moment of silence, and everyone understood he was referring to the accident that had changed everything. "James," William said, "can you tell me what really happened that day?" James looked at Mrs. Beatrice, who nodded encouragingly. "We were playing in Grandma's backyard. It was a very hot day, and you wanted to eat peaches. I said I'd climb the apple tree to get the highest ones, which are always the sweetest." William closed his eyes, the memory returning with full clarity. "I stayed below cheering for you." "That's right, you shouted, 'Go, James, you can do it!' And I was showing off trying to climb higher than was safe. And when you fell, I thought it was my fault for encouraging you. But it wasn't your fault, Billy. It was an accident. Kids climb trees. Sometimes they fall. It's part of being a kid." Sarah was listening intently, beginning to understand the complexity of the family story. "Dad, is that why you never let me climb trees when I was little?" Mr. William looked at his daughter, realizing how his fears had reflected in her upbringing. "I guess so. I was afraid something would happen to you too." "But nothing did," James said softly. "I hurt my head, spent some time in the hospital, and had to relearn a few things. But I'm here. I'm fine. And you had no fault in any of it." That night, after James went to sleep, Mr. William and Sarah talked on the porch. "Dad, now I understand why you didn't want to sell Grandma's house. And now I understand why my mother taught me never to force you to remember things that hurt too much. Do you think James can stay with us permanently?" Mr. William looked at his daughter, surprised by the question. "Would you like that?" "I'd like to get to know my uncle better, and I think he can teach us a lot about forgiving and moving forward." "Sarah, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Do you think I was a good father, even with all those secrets and fears I carried?" Sarah smiled and took her father's hand. "Dad, you always did the best you could with what you knew at the time. Now we know more, so we can do better." The next day, Mr. William woke up for the first time in years without any pain in his chest. He found James in the kitchen having coffee with Beatrice. "Good morning, little brother," James said cheerfully. "Good morning. How did you sleep?" "Better than in the last 40 years. Beatrice poured coffee for Mr. William and placed the green bottle on the table. "Do I still need this?" asked Mr. William. "What do you think, sir?" Mr. William touched his chest. There was no pain, no tension. For the first time in decades, he felt whole. "I don't think I need it anymore. But I'd like to learn how to make it," said James, "in case someday you need to remember something good." Beatrice smiled and began teaching the recipe to James. Mr. William realized that his housekeeper had been much more than that all these years. She had been the guardian of the family's memory. "Beatrice, can I ask you something?" "Of course, boss." "Why did you never get married? Never have your own family?" Beatrice stopped stirring the drink and looked at him fondly. "I did have a family, you all. Taking care of you has always been my most important mission. But you sacrificed your own life." "I didn't sacrifice. I chose. Your mother was like a sister to me. Taking care of her children always made me happy." Mr. William stood up and hugged Beatrice. "Thank you so much for everything." "You're welcome, my son." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. In the following weeks, the family's life changed completely. James adapted well to the house and established his own routine. Every morning he and Mr. William walked through the neighborhood, talking about the day's plans. James had shown interest in his brother's business and started going to the office a few times a week. To everyone's surprise, James had a natural ability to deal with people. The employees liked him immediately, and he began helping with the clients who visited the company. "You know, Mr. William," Richard said one day, "your brother has a special way with people. Today he convinced that difficult client to sign the contract just by talking about birds." "What do you mean?" "They discovered that both enjoy birdwatching." James told him about the ones he tends to in the garden at home, and the man was charmed. He said he had never met anyone so genuine. William smiled. James had always had that ability to touch people, in a simple, direct way. One afternoon, Sarah came home with news. "Dad, I need to tell you something. William and James were in the garden trying to teach a bird to say hi." "What is it, sweetheart?" "I'm pregnant." William dropped the birdseed container he was holding. "Pregnant?" 3 months. Christopher and I were waiting to be sure before telling you." James stood up and hugged his niece. "Congratulations, Sarah. I'm going to be a great uncle." William was still processing the information when Sarah continued, "And there's something else. Christopher asked for my hand in marriage." "And you said yes?" "I did. But I want both of you to be there. I want Uncle James to be the godfather along with you, Dad." William hugged his daughter, feeling a deep emotion. His family was growing, and for the first time in decades he felt ready to celebrate life instead of fearing it. "Of course we'll be there. Both of us." That night, the 3 of them went to visit the house in Philadelphia. William had decided to renovate it rather than sell it. He wanted it to be a place where the family could gather, where the next generations could create their own memories. "Look at that," said James, pointing to the apple tree in the backyard. "It's still here." "And it's still enormous," observed Sarah. William looked at the tree that had caused so much suffering in the family. "Do you think we should cut it down?" "Why would we do that?" asked James. "Because of what happened." James approached the tree and touched the trunk. "William, this tree wasn't at fault for my accident, and it gave us many delicious apples during childhood. Why should it pay for something it didn't do?" William reflected on his brother's words. For years he had blamed the tree, blamed himself, blamed fate. But James was right. Sometimes things just happen. "You're right. Let's keep the tree. And we'll teach my future nephew or niece to climb it," said James with a mischievous smile. "James," protested Sarah. "Safely, of course, with proper equipment and always under supervision." William laughed. His brother could still turn any situation into an adventure. As they explored the house, Beatrice found an old box in the attic. Inside were childhood photos of the brothers, letters their mother had written but never sent, and a notebook where she recorded the recipes she prepared for her children. "Look at this," she said, showing a specific page. "The recipe for the green drink." William read the ingredients: lemon balm, honey, lemon drops, and a few leaves from a specific plant that grew in the backyard. "That's all?" "That's all," confirmed Beatrice. "Your mother used to say the power wasn't in the ingredients, but in the love with which it was prepared." James flipped through the notebook and found other family recipes. "Look, the cornbread that Grandma used to make, and the peach cobbler that Mom prepared for the holidays. We can make all of these for Sarah's wedding," suggested William. "It would be a way to honor the women in our family," agreed Sarah. They spent the rest of the afternoon planning the house renovation and the wedding. James had suggested that the ceremony be held in the garden of the property under the apple tree. "It would be symbolic," he explained, "turning a place of pain into a place of joy." Sarah loved the idea, and William realized his family had learned to turn their scars into strength. A few weeks later, William received an unexpected phone call. It was the director of the assisted living facility where James had lived. "Mr. William, we're calling to thank you for the donation you made." "Donation? Did you authorize a donation to renovate the garden where James spent his mornings?" William looked at James, who was pretending to read a newspaper in the living room. "James, did you make a donation to the assisted living facility?" "Maybe," he replied, without lifting his eyes from the newspaper. "With what money?" "With the allowance you give me." William had started giving James a monthly amount so he could have his financial independence. He never imagined he would be using the money to help others. "James, you didn't have to spend your money on that." "Of course I did. Those friends I left behind deserve a beautiful garden to take care of the birds." William felt his heart warm. His brother had spent 40 years in an institution and still only thought about how to help the people left behind. "How about we make a larger donation? In our family's name?" "You would do that?" "Of course. And we can visit your friends whenever you want." James closed the newspaper and smiled. "I would love that. There's an old man there, Mr. Thomas, who always wanted to meet James's famous brother." "Famous?" I always talked about you to everyone. I told them my little brother was the most successful businessman in New York City. William laughed, realizing that James had been proud of him all those years of separation. On the day of Sarah's wedding, the house in Philadelphia was unrecognizable. William had hired a team to renovate everything while keeping the original charm of the property. The garden was in bloom, and a small makeshift chapel was set up under the apple tree. James wore a new suit that William had bought for him. He was nervous about the responsibility of being a best man. "What if I forget what I'm supposed to say?" "You won't forget," William reassured him, "and if you do, I'll help you." Like we always did when we were kids. Exactly like we always did. The ceremony was simple and moving. When it was time for the best man and maid of honor to speak, James stood up and looked at Sarah. "Sarah, I didn't know you when you were little, but I can see you've grown into a strong and intelligent woman. Your father always spoke of you with such pride, and now I understand why." He paused, emotional. "I want you to know that having a family again is the greatest gift I could ever receive, and I promise I'll be the best great-uncle this baby could have." There wasn't a dry eye in the ceremony. William hugged his brother and Sarah joined them in a family embrace. After the ceremony, while the guests were enjoying themselves, William found Mrs. Beatrice in the kitchen, preparing the recipes from their mother's notebook. "Mrs. Beatrice, can I ask you a favor?" "Of course, boss." "Stop calling me boss. You're family. You always have been." Mrs. Beatrice smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. "All right, William." "Mrs. Beatrice, I want you to know that everything I've achieved in life I've achieved because you took care of me when I needed it most. You were the mother I had left when I lost mine, and the brother I was missing when I forgot about James. William, taking care of you all has always been my joy." "I know, but now it's your turn to be taken care of. I want you to retire, but continue living with us, as family." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. James already said he wants to learn all your recipes, and I want you to teach Sarah how to take care of a family the way you took care of ours." Mrs. Beatrice hugged William, and he realized that he had finally come full circle. His family was complete again. Months later, when Sarah's baby was born, it was James who suggested the name. "If it's a girl, we could call her Margaret, in honor of our mother, and if it's a boy, how about Bennett, in honor of Mrs. Beatrice?" Sarah gave birth to a healthy boy, and Bennett Harrison became the center of attention for the family. James proved to be a devoted great-uncle, always inventing games and stories to entertain his nephew. Roberto had installed a swing on the apple tree in the backyard, and Miguel spent hours rocking the baby while telling him about the birds flying around. "Look, Benny," he would say, "that's a bem-TV. It sings its own name, and that one over there is a sabia. It has the most beautiful voice of all." One day William found Miguel sitting on the swing holding Bennett, who was sleeping peacefully. "He likes you, and I like him. It's nice to have someone small to take care of again." "Miguel, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Don't you feel angry at me for forgetting you all those years?" Miguel looked at his nephew sleeping in his arms. "William, do you want me to be totally honest?" "I do. At first, I missed you a lot. I cried every night wondering why you never came to visit me. But as I grew up, I understood that you were just a traumatized child. And then? Then I started rooting for you. Every time Mom told me about your successes, I felt proud. It was like part of me was conquering the world through you." William sat down on the bench next to the swing. "You're a better person than I am. I'm not better or worse. We're different. You learned to build companies. I learned to build friendships. You took care of the family's money. I took care of the memories. Both were important. Miguel, can I tell you a secret?" "Sure. Ever since you came back into my life, I've been happier than I've ever been. And more successful too." "How so?" "My employees like working with me more. My clients trust me more. It's like having my brother back has made me a more complete person." Miguel smiled. "Maybe because now you're no longer spending energy trying to forget. You can use all your strength to create new things." William reflected on his brother's words. It was true. Ever since he stopped fighting his memories, he felt lighter, more creative, more connected to the people around him. "Miguel, Would you like to officially become my business partner? Me? But I don't know anything about business. You understand people. And business is done between people. You could handle the client relationship side, while I handle the technical side. Miguel thought for a moment. It would be nice to have a real job. I'd feel more useful. Then it's settled. Tomorrow we'll go to the notary and register you as a partner. William. What? Thank you for looking for me. I know it was hard for you. Miguel, thank you for waiting for me all these years. I know it was hard for you too. The two brothers were silent for a moment, watching the birds in the garden, while Bennett slept peacefully. A few years later, the Harrison Brothers Company had become one of the most respected in New York City, not only for the quality of its work, but for the humane way it treated employees and clients. Miguel had developed a program where the company employed people with special needs, and William discovered that these employees were some of the most dedicated and creative he had ever had. The house in Philadelphia became the family gathering place on the first Sunday of every month. Sarah and Christopher would bring Bennett, who was already crawling and showing interest in the garden birds. Mrs. Beatrice would prepare the traditional recipes, and Miguel always came up with a new game. One afternoon, while organizing old photos to make a family album, William found a letter that his mother had written but never sent. It was addressed to him. My dear William, I know that one day you will want to remember your brother. When that day comes, look for Mrs. Beatrice. She knows how to help you find your way back home. Love is never lost. Sometimes it just hides, waiting for the right moment to appear again. Your mother who loves you, Margaret. William showed the letter to James and Beatrice. She knew this would happen, said James. Mothers always know, Beatrice agreed. Mrs. Margaret once told me that you two were like two branches of the same tree. You could grow in different directions, but you would always remain connected by the root. William looked out the window at the apple tree in the backyard, where Benny was trying to reach some low branches under his father's careful supervision. Beatrice, do you think we made the right choice in keeping the tree? I think we did. Trees teach us that even after a storm it's possible to grow again, sometimes even stronger than before. That night, William had a dream unlike any other. He dreamed he was back in childhood, playing in the backyard with James. But this time, instead of watching his brother climb the tree, they were on the ground, teaching a small child how to plant seeds. When he woke up, William realized the dream wasn't about the past, but about the future. He and James were planting seeds of love and unity for the next generations of the family. William got up and went to the kitchen, where he found James making breakfast. Good morning, little brother, James said cheerfully. Good morning. Did you sleep well? Perfectly, and you? I dreamed we were planting seeds. What kind of seeds? Family seeds. James smiled and poured coffee for William. You know, I think we've been planting those seeds for a while now. What do you mean? Sarah is learning that family is about forgiveness and acceptance. Benny is growing up in a home full of love and stories. Beatrice feels valued after years of taking care of others. William took a sip of coffee and agreed. And we learned that it's never too late to recover what you've lost. Exactly, and that sometimes the things we're most afraid to face are the ones we most need to embrace. At that moment, Sarah came into the kitchen carrying Benny, who immediately stretched out his little arms to James. Good morning, Uncle James. Good morning, Grandpa. Good morning, Princess, William replied, kissing his daughter's forehead. James picked up Benny and made a funny face that drew laughter from the boy. So, Benny, are we going to teach the birds to talk today? The baby clapped his hands and everyone laughed. Uncle James, Sarah said, do you think it's too early to teach a child about forgiveness and family? It's never too early, but I think the best way to teach is by setting an example. And what example are we setting? William looked around the kitchen, seeing his family gathered, happy and complete. We're showing that love is stronger than pain. That family is about being present, even after a long time apart, and that it's never too late to start over. Beatrice entered the kitchen at that moment, already dressed for the day. Good morning, family. Good morning, Beatrice, everyone answered in chorus. What do we have for today? Today, said James, still playing with Benny, is a perfect day to be happy. And for the first time in decades, William completely agreed. There was no pain in his chest, no painful memories, no fear of the future. There was only a reunited family, a new day, and endless possibilities for creating happy memories. The green bottle was still stored in the kitchen, but William knew he wouldn't need it anymore. The real remedy wasn't in the drink, but in the people around him. The true healing power was in love, forgiveness, and the courage to face the past in order to build a better future. As he watched James playing with Benny, William realized that his brother had given him the greatest gift possible, proof that family love can survive any storm, any separation, any pain, and that when we finally find our way back home, it will always be there waiting with open arms. End of the story. Now tell me what you thought of this story and where you're watching us from. If you have something to share with us, leave it in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe William made the right decision in looking for James? We'd love to read your opinion. Thank you very much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other exciting stories.